Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 203 of Exploring the Lord of the Rings. Tonight we are going to talk about the Fellowship near the Ring, or the Fellowship in some way associated with the Ring. That's going to be one of the things we're going to talk about. What exactly is the link between the Fellowship and the Ring is the primary thing that jumps out at me about this this coming passage. No, Anna, it's not that I've given up on my glasses. It's just that I forgot to put them on. It's still unnatural. I've only just gotten old recently, so wearing reading glasses is still kind of foreign. I still tend to forget to wear them until like the headache starts, and I'm like, oh yeah, I really should have been wearing my glasses. Anyway, there we are. Anyhow, and yes, folks on YouTube, this is actually live. Just to clarify, let me do a couple quick announcements because we got some exciting stuff coming up here in these next couple weekends. Last weekend, I was in Iowa for Middlemoot. We had a wonderful time, really great conference. Mike Drought was there, and we talked a lot of philology during the day, talked a lot about language. Great time. And another really successful hybrid moot. I've been feeling really happy with our hybrid moots. Great participation both from our physical and our digital attendees on Saturday. Looking forward to continuing that and keeping that going. So, but anyway, so first thing I wanted to announce was that we have another moot coming up soon. Registration just opened for Bay Moot in California. We're going to be in Berkeley, California. I'm looking forward to getting out to that one physically as well. I will be there in Berkeley on the 6th of November. There's the link just posted in Discord. If you go to signumuniversity.org/events, you can find the link to Bay Moot and then to registration for the conference. And again, you can sign up both to attend digitally or to attend physically. Both are equally possible at Bay Moot. Well, I know not equally possible for everyone. That's why we have the digital option. So there you are. Okay, so there's all right, so that's what that's the first announcement. The second announcement is that this weekend, this Saturday, the 16th of October, is our webathon, our annual fall fundraising campaign concluding webathon. We've been doing, donor appreciation stuff for several weeks. We've already raised more money this year so far. We have almost $73,000 in gifts and pledges. And we've already raised more money than we did all year 2 years ago. And it's just awesome. Our goal is $100,000 and we're like actually aggressively on our way towards that. So I am extremely excited and very grateful as always to the generosity of our community who continues to help Signum to continue to exist and to move forward. I was sharing with you guys some of, earlier on. Well, no, I shared in my Wednesday broadcast a little bit earlier on some of what we've been able to accomplish in this past year with the money that we raised last year, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that, as well as about our new program. The big exciting thing is I'm going to start off our webathon at 1 p.m. Eastern Time with my annual State of the University address. And in my State of the University address, I'm going to be explaining all about our exciting new program, the space program, Signum Portals for Adult Continuing Education. You are not going to want to miss this. A whole new set of new opportunities for wonderful, exciting, and stimulating education that we are making possible for you at Signum. So I hope that you will be able to join me for that. Again, at 1 o'clock is where we're going to begin with the State of the University address. Then we're going to have a whole bunch of space capsules during the day, little sort of samplers of some of the space courses that we're going to be running right away when we begin. And then and in the middle of it also, I'm going to be doing a Reddit AMA on the Tolkien fans subreddit, and I'm gonna live stream doing the AMA, so y'all can help me with my answers to the questions that folks asked me on Reddit. It's gonna be kind of meta, actually, live streaming doing an AMA, but it's gonna be fun. So that's gonna happen at 4 p.m. And then later on, and these are all the times I'm giving here are Eastern time. And then later on in the evening, starting about 9 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to be doing another little mini Lotro marathon where I'm hoping to get my Guardian Wiggin through the rest of the Mordor storyline. And then who knows what happens after that. So anyway, that's what's happening here in this next week and a half. So I hope folks will be able to join me. We're going to have some special giveaways and lots of fun on Webathon Day. There's going to be a trivia contest with prizes and all kinds of things. So I hope that you will join me again, starting at 1 p.m. and going until probably about 1 a.m. Eastern time will be the Webathon on the day. More details to come later on, but including a registration link and all kinds of things. But there we are. So that's what is happening. Now let us get. Oh, sorry, I forgot to advance my slide. Well, we're supposed to have this slide up. Anyway, so there we are. You can, of course, make a donation to Signum University at signumuniversity.org/fund. That's where you can find all the information about our fund and many links to our donation page. And again, as always, I'm so grateful to everybody who has donated to help and support Signum and to keep all of our programs running. It's a really, really big deal. And if you've never donated before, I encourage you to consider it because we really appreciate our donors. And without our donors, none of this would certainly have been possible. I often feel this way. Sometimes people will say things like, they'll say to me things like, hey, it's really impressive how you've managed to create this university all by yourself. I'm like, are you kidding me? I didn't create this university all by myself. It's nuts. Nobody could do that. All that we've done, everything that we've accomplished, everything that we've set up, and everything that we continue to do at Signum is because of all of the support and the help we've had from our community. There's absolutely no way that anyone could do this university thing all by themselves. Anyway, thanks again to everybody who has supported us. Now, let us get back to the text. Elrond is about to make some declarations, and it's interesting because we were talking during the council about how comparatively hands-off Elrond was, right? He got spunky at one point in the middle of the council, right? When he, made a declaration, we must send the ring to the fire. But even then, they'd already kind of built up to that, and it was already relatively clear by that point. Then later on, he said, if I understand right all that I have heard, I believe that this task is appointed for you, Frodo. But that was more of an affirmation than a decision per se, right? As we talked about there and revisited last week, he really left that very pointedly for Frodo to volunteer rather than assigning that or even making any suggestions. Here, however, we see him being very much more proactive about things. Elrond's got a plan, right? So let's look at Elrond's plan. And I will choose you companions to go with you, as far as they will or fortune allows. The number must be few, since your hope is in speed and secrecy. Had I a host of elves in armor of the elder days, it would avail little, save to arouse the power of Mordor. The company of the ring shall be 9, and the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. With you and your faithful servant, Gandalf will go, for this shall be his great task, and maybe the end of his labors. For the rest, they shall represent the other free peoples of the world, elves, dwarves, and men. Legolas shall be for the elves, and Gimli, son of Glóin, for the dwarves. They are willing to go at least to the passes of the mountains, and maybe beyond. For men you shall have Aragorn, son of Arathorn, for the ring of Isildur concerns him closely. Strider, cried Frodo. Yes, he said with a smile. I ask leave once again to be your companion, Frodo. I would have begged you to come, said Frodo, only I thought you were going to Minas Tirith with Boromir. I am, said Aragorn, and the sword that was broken shall be reforged ere I set out to war. But your road and our road lie together for many hundreds of miles. Therefore, Boromir will also be in the company. He is a valiant man. Okay. Lots going on here. The first thing I want to emphasize, again, notice the sort of mood. I don't mean emotional mood. I mean grammatical mood, right? He is not... he's speaking in the future tense indicative mood, right? The company of the ring shall be 9, and the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil, right? Look at that sentence. He is saying, here's how it's going to be, and this is why it's going to be that way, right? Gandalf will go. And again, he not only says what's going to happen with the elves, dwarves, and men, right? Legolas shall be Gimli, and Gimli for the dwarves, right? With the parallelism implying shall be also. Now, he does ascertain that, he does explain that he has ascertained their willingness, right? He's not just dragooning them into this, right? This is presumably not news to Legolas and Gimli when he says it to the hobbits here, right? They are willing to go to at least to the passes of the mountains and maybe beyond. So he has had conversations with them, right? Lupita, I agree. It would be fun if they didn't know, right? Yeah, that would be fun. You're right, Nathan. 9 walkers versus 9 wraiths is kind of like a baseball game. Yes, it kind of is. But yeah. So no, Cook. I don't think they're being voluntold here exactly. But I do think that they are. The way that he's laying this out for the hobbits, though, is interesting, right? Because I do not think when he says Legolas shall be for the elves and Gimli son of Glóin for the dwarves, for men you shall have Aragorn son of Arathorn. I don't think that this is chance, right? He said that the council just kind of came together spontaneously, right? He called, I say, though I did not call you, though I have not called you. But I think he is calling together the fellowship here, right? And I think that this whole they shall represent the other free peoples of the world, elves, dwarves, and men, seems not to be a coincidence. I don't think he just, canvassed the, local population for volunteers and was like, wow, look at that. We got an elf, we got a dwarf, we got a whole free peoples of the world thing going on here, right? That's great. That is not what I think is happening here. I think it's pretty clear that Elrond has a plan, right? And he is pushing this plan forward. It is clear, by the way, so have Legolas and Gimli been voluntold? No, they have not. And again, we see him emphasizing the free choice, right? That's still going on. We emphasized that last week, of course, very importantly with Frodo, how Elrond's sort of deliberate reticence, or at least his sort of strategy there with Frodo at the beginning, set Frodo up to make that vow, right? That affirming choice of his own. And we see that he seems to be doing a similar thing with the rest of them. Although he does seem to have had a plan, right? He does seem to want the company to represent the other free peoples of the world. And I agree, Matt, the word other is interesting. Usually the free people are men, elves, and dwarves, clearly. And so I agree with you that Elrond is clearly indicating that hobbits are numbered among the free people. Yeah, well, especially to this crowd, right? I mean, he's called the hobbits together, so he's talking presumably to all 5 of them, right? And he's addressing the 5 hobbits. And so certainly here, but I'm willing to believe elsewhere as well, that he is counting the hobbits among the free peoples of the world as a, 4th group in the free peoples of the world. And I agree, Gilgalmthir, all of the free peoples of the world are involved and all have a stake. It's true. It's true. And no, Drowsnake, there's no evidence that he's counting the squirrels. Besides which, why should he? The squirrels are already, they can no longer travel quite so conveniently from tree to tree as they once did, but no doubt the squirrels are already in place, Now, Ents could be free people. Of course, now Elrond has a very good reason not to include the Ents here. First of all, there aren't any present, so he can't exactly send one out with them. But of course, even more importantly, when Tolkien wrote this, the Ents hadn't been invented yet. So that's a pretty good reason for him not to send them out either. And obviously, he could have attempted to sort of retcon that in, but he didn't retcon them in, right? Jordan, you're right. Bill the pony isn't counted among the 9 walkers, for he trots. What you're saying, that they still need a trotter in the company, even though Strider no longer has that name. And you're right, he's not exactly free, I suppose. Yes. Yeah, Goob Jones. Welcome, by the way, Goob Jones. I saw it was your first time with us here tonight. You're right that Ents would fail the speed and secrecy test. Speed at least, right? Secrecy certainly in some contexts. They'd be a little bit of tension gathering in some circumstances, no question. Anna suggests they'd also fail the small hands test too. Right now, of course, Gandalf would also in that sense, but anyway, I think that I don't think Elrond is trying to be 100%. It needs to be 100% inclusive here. Absolutely. Now, we're gonna come back in and I want to come back to the question of exactly what is his plan here, right? The first thing I wanted to point out is just kind of the overview, right? The overview of what he seems to be up to here. And again, I want to emphasize those 2 things. One, Elrond is being assertive here. I will choose you companions to go with you, right? Elrond's taking charge, right? He is going to send people along with him again. But the second point is he is also making sure that they too go forth of their own free will. This seems to be an important thing to him. Because notice how he immediately qualifies that. He says that really assertive thing at the beginning. And I will choose you companions to go with you, as far as they will or fortune allows. Qualifier, right? I will choose you companions to go with you, but I'm not going to compel them to stay with you. As far as they will or fortune allows. So the first half of the first of the 2 conditions makes sense, right? I mean, that's understandable. In the context that we have seen from Elrond, free will, it's important, right? as far as they will. I'm not going to make them, I'm not going to try to constrain them. Their choice is free to stay with you or to continue with you. Their choice is free, right? But as fortune allows, as far as they will or fortune allows. Now, on the one hand, you can say, okay, stuff's going to happen, right? That nobody's going to be able to anticipate. So, you could say that taking a side trip by way of the abyss under Durin's bridge, spoilers, is one example of fortune not allowing one of their companions to go any further at that stage, right? So it and yeah, Bart, it is certainly possible that it has some of the same air of that clause in the Hobbit contract about the burial expenses clause. Exactly. I mean, stuff's going to happen, including the unexpected mortality of one or more members of the Fellowship. Could happen, right? So yes, if your fortune does not allow you to survive, then no, you're probably not going to continue. But at the same time, I am not sure that that's all that it means, or rather, let me say it a different way. Starting off with as far as they will, or fortune allows, suggests that he's not just allowing for unexpected disasters or something like that, but something could come up. Right, something could come up that there are a couple reasons why one of the companions might leave the company and not continue any longer with Frodo. Right, one is they don't want to anymore. They're like, I'm out. That he leaves that open from the very beginning. The second is that fortune does not allow them. Like they're just like they die or something like that. But third would be something comes up and they feel compelled. They have to make the decision not to, right? Not because they're not willing, right? Not because they're just like, no, I don't really want to go anymore, right? But because they've, and we'll see this, right? This is exactly what is going to happen. In fact, both of those last two categories I described, we're going to see happening, right? Gandalf is not going to be allowed by fortune to continue with the company all that long. And Aragorn is also going to make a decision not to go with Frodo from the Falls of Rauros, right? Not because he's unwilling to go, but because fortune has not allowed it. Stuff has happened. Of course, Boromir also is not allowed by fortune to continue any further either. Neither are Merry and Pippin. They also, for their fortune, does not allow them to continue any further than that either. Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn are going to choose to leave Frodo and go off in a different direction, but not because of a lack of willingness, right? So there is that second condition, or fortune allows, is fairly general, but he does. But I think it's worth noting that he seems to anticipate this kind of thing, right? What he's not doing, and we're going to come back to this when he is having his famous exchange with Gimli a little bit down the road, right? We'll get there fairly soon, a few weeks. The whole, no, I don't want you to take any oaths conversation. He doesn't bind anybody to this quest. And none of the companions. And he seems to anticipate things are going to come up. These companions that he's sending with Frodo, these are not designed to get Frodo to the cracks of doom. It's clear from sentence 1 of this section, of this passage here, that Elrond does not even really expect, conceive, imagine, really? He seems to have very little expectation that the companions that are going with Frodo are going to be along for the long haul. He's let them all opt out, and he's anticipating that many of them are going to be ultimately prevented one way or the other, right? So his first sentence is assertive, but it's kind of ambivalent in a sense. Like on the one hand, yeah, I'm going to send folks with you. You're not going to go by yourself. You'll have help, but don't count on it, right? We'll get to that more as we'll see as we go through. The number must be few, since our hope is in speed and secrecy. Had I a host of elves in armor of the elder days, it would avail little, save to arouse the power of Mordor. This is not a Last Alliance situation, but certainly a host of elves in armor of the elder days, I think really is designed to get us thinking of the Last Alliance. I think in this first paragraph, he is inviting an explicit parallel between this setting out from Rivendell and that other setting out from Rivendell several thousand years ago, right? When the Last Alliance said, because they set out from Rivendell, right? To go down to Mordor. And of course, we have had Elrond connected with Gil-galad and with the Last Alliance from very early on in the Fellowship. You'll remember when Frodo, burst out, right? Yeah, and you're right, Fourth Dauntless. I do think it is worth noting that Elrond picked really well. The people the companions that he chose to go with them, do achieve, each of them, great deeds for the benefit of the free peoples. I agree. Yes. Okay, so had I a host of elves in armor of the elder days, it would avail little. I am not sending you with Gil-galad's army, right? Like I last set out with Gil-galad's army from this spot, right? When it was that time several thousand years ago. Why? Well, we don't have them. If they had Gil-galad's army, maybe they'd think about it, but they don't have Gil-galad's army. But even if he had, he says, it would avail little save to arouse the power of Mordor. Your hope is in speed and secrecy, and that hope is clearly their Umdir, right? Their Umdir is in speed and secrecy. Yes, and you're right, Bjorning in Exile. You're absolutely right that a Glorfindel level elf would be very conspicuous on this trip, right? Imagine, if you will, that moment, remembering ahead, right? The moment in Minas Morgul when Frodo and Sam and Gollum are sneaking in and they're hiding like behind a rock while the Witch King rides by, and the whole rest of the army as they leave, they're like, I don't know how many like yards away from the Witch King right there. If Glorfindel were there is no way. Like, first of all, like he'd have to cloak himself a lot better, right? But the Witch King would be able to sense him, right? I mean, from much, much closer than that. Glorfindel is obvious, right? Very, very obvious. Yeah, more than Gandalf. I'm not sure about this, Lupita, but I think that remember Gandalf, of course, we talked about this recently, and you're unlikely to forget this. But of course, remember that Gandalf speaks of cloaking himself, right? Then you will see Gandalf the Grey uncloaked. Implication, I'm cloaked most of the time, right? That way that he can conceal his power makes him different, I think, from Glorfindel. I don't see any evidence that Glorfindel can cloak himself in the same way. I mean, it's just, look, when you're that awesome, you just glow, right? I mean, what are you supposed to do? You can't help it, right? So I'm really not, I don't know that there is any evidence that I don't know that there's any evidence that Glorfindel could cloak his power in that way. Yeah. But remember, the Istari, the embodiment of the Istari, is a kind of cloak, right? I mean, it's the whole point of the embodiment, of the incarnation of the Istari, is to conceal their power in part, to enable them to work, to operate, incognito in Middle-earth. Rachel, that's a fascinating question on YouTube. Is Gollum the only companion who takes an oath? Well, Frodo kind of did, right? With his I do in last week's passage. But yeah, remember that question, Rachel, when we get to that. It's only book 4. We'll get there soon. Yeah. Sam has too. Absolutely. Sam already has. Right. Sam took an oath to the elves in Woodhall. Right. He promised them that he was, like, it might not sound quite as grand and certainly infinitely less creepy and dangerous than the Oath of Feanor. But I don't mean to. I will stay with Mr. Frodo if he goes to the moon. That's an oath, right? I mean, he's well, okay. I mean, for Dauntless, it's quite possible you can. He doesn't call anything into witness to the oath. I mean, you could quibble with that, but he's given his word. I mean, he's made a promise. He's not in, for as far as he is concerned, right? And the transaction that he has made, it's not a as far as he will kind of situation. And notice that Elrond himself is exempts Sam from this clause. Right? You and your faithful servant, they're a unit, right? The two of them are going. The only question is who's going with them. I don't think your faithful servant is included in the as far as they will or fortune allows clauses of the companion choice, really. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Admiral Malcontent argues that it's similar to Faramir taking his word as an oath later on. Yes. People are asking about the sort of distinction, right, between an oath and a promise. Exactly what's the difference? Well, the primary difference would be basically naming something in witness, like you sort of, when you're doing a proper oath, right, you state like consequences that will come upon you if you break the oath. You name somebody in witness of the oath, like somebody to enforce the oath, right? What would happen to you if you break the oath and all that kind of thing. So it's true. And I would even say that the reaction of the elves at Woodhall. Do you remember the reaction of the elves at Woodhall when Sam makes his promise? How do they react? They laugh, Trifle. Exactly. Yeah. Christopher remembers it too. They laugh at him when he says that. So, they're clearly not, like, ooh, like that's a huge deal, right? I mean, they laugh. But so it's again, this is not the Oath of Feanor here. But still, he has made a promise, and his volunteering and his being named as Frodo's companion at the council, by the council, clearly puts him in a different category. Yeah, I agree, Matt. In general, we do have few true oaths in modern life. Yeah, there are very few times that, like, it's not a thing that we really do anymore. Sometimes, as you say, an oath of office, marriage vows. There are, you're swearing in at court. There are very, very few of those kinds of formal occasions. But ordination, yes, and joining a religious order, yep. No, there's some that still exist, but it's still true that there are not very many of them in the sense of how often we see that happen, how often people in general do those things. No, Hafalas, I would say, on the one hand, yes, it's certainly true that we don't take them as seriously as we used to. But I would also say there are fewer, for sure. That kind of an occasion, where you swear an oath in front of witnesses, swearing, by or, under the power of like an arbiter, and naming consequences unto yourself if you don't keep the oath. Like, that doesn't happen all that often. And no, Green Great Dragon, the terms and agreements pages on software does not count. It definitely does not count. Yes. But anyway, yeah. Okay, so interesting, yeah. Steve Higgins says, I always thought that Gandalf bound Sam to Frodo when he said, you shall accompany him. Well, Steve Higgins, I mean, we can see how much of the volunteering that Sam and Frodo both do at the council is prefigured in the Shadow of the Past, right? What happens in the first chapter 2 sets in motion the decisions of the second chapter 2. It doesn't make those moments, both for Frodo and for Sam at the council, less important. I think they're clearly still important, but I also think that Gandalf pretty much knew what was what. You shall go with Mr. Frodo. Sam is voluntold in that moment, right? Though, of course, his response is, hooray, right? So I agree, Christopher, for exactly that reason. While it's phrased as a command, I think that Gandalf is more giving permission to Sam. Yes, exactly. I agree. But for Thomas, you're right. There's a big difference between someone telling you you must do this and you yourself taking on that task under pain of consequence. Yes, exactly. And Sam has certainly shown his own choice and his own willingness. And, that's why, plain as a pikestaff it is, right? I mean, he says he's going to say later on, it has been for him from the beginning here, right? He always knew what was going to happen and certainly what he was going to do. But anyway, okay. Back for a second to his deliberate invocation. I would call this a deliberate invocation, just an invoking of the idea of the last alliance, right? It would avail little save to arouse the power of Mordor. Speed and secrecy are your hope. We cannot compete with Mordor in strength. We've established this, right, at the council. Therefore, speed and secrecy is where your hope lies. The last alliance would not do us any good if we could do it here. But that leads him in transition to the company of the ring shall be 9, and the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. Do you notice something important up there? Okay. Fourth Dauntless, I agree with you. Okay, let me pause for a second there. Fourth Dauntless, I agree with you that the Elder Days does not necessarily mean the last alliance. I agree that when he says a host of elves in armor of the Elder Days, he is evoking the idea of like the army of the Gondolindrim emerging out of Gondolin at the Near-Ninth Arnoediad or something like that, right? I mean, he's thinking of the Elder Days. What he's invoking is the mythic past, right? Had I, even if we could conjure up the greatest, most splendid thing that you can imagine, right? A host of elves in armor of the elder days. It wouldn't do us much good, right? It wouldn't help much. Though I wouldn't say no if they offered, honestly, right? I wouldn't say no. But, yeah, though, hang on, side note. You know what that makes me think of, Fort Thomas? It makes me think of the one war of the elder days, which Elrond did in fact witness, right? Elrond missed most of the elder days. I mean, Elrond remembers the first age barely, right? He was only a wee tot for the majority of what he saw of the first age. He's born at the very, very end of the first age. But he does see one thing, right? And that thing that he sees is the War of Wrath, when the armies of Valinor came to Middle-earth to overthrow Morgoth in the end. And that was a big deal. You're right, Nathan. He also sees elves in armor of the elder days attacking his own people. Yes, true. The third kinslaying, he was a witness, indeed a prisoner of war at the time of the third kinslaying. So that's certainly true. But yes, the War of Wrath, he was around for that. He certainly will remember the host of elves in armor of the elder days. That is the host of the Vanyar, right, in armor of the elder days, who arrived and fought the last battle of the first age there, the War of Wrath. But that it would avail little save to arouse the power of Mordor. So obviously, he's not saying that he thinks that's likely to happen again. Not that you could 100% rule that out, right? I mean, after all, we're at the parallel moment here, right? I mean, we're coming to the end of the third age, just as before they were near the end of the first age. And the end of the age is, determined by the overthrow of the bad guy. No, there's no real reason to think that the Valar are suddenly going to send a relief column from Valinor to rescue the people of Middle-earth from Sauron. But of course, there was no real reason to think it would happen the first time either. Now, there's more difficulties. Valinor has been taken away out of the circles of the world, etc., etc. So yeah, even more unlikely now than before, right? Nancy says it's not like the Vanyar are doing much these days. Exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. But Trifle, that's exactly what I was thinking there. Trifle says, I think everyone is hoping not for a repeat of the War of Wrath because they rather like the continent and would like it to stick around. Exactly. The point is not only that it's extremely unlikely. We're not going to hold our breath for the armies of the West to show up again and wage war against the power of Mordor. But I don't think it's desirable. I also obviously I don't think it's Elrond knows full well it's not going to happen. As one of you was, Fort Thoughtless, as you were suggesting there, the eucatastrophe of the Finding the Ring has kind of tipped the hand of Providence here, right? As they were discussing in the council, it's kind of clear what they were meant to do. Right, how this story is meant to come out. This is not a setup for, and all of a sudden, bam, the armies of the Vanyar appear on the shores and Galdor is super surprised, right? That's not how this story is working out, right? That's not, that is not the direction that things seem to be moving in here. So there are, in fact, active reasons for them to think that that's not going to happen. But I would still agree with Trifle's point. I don't think it would be desirable. You could take that phrase, save to arouse the power of Mordor. Doesn't necessarily mean that Mordor would win, right? But it means that, like, what would happen would be, we would be settling this thing in a long, terrible, and indeed catastrophic for the continent and stuff, war, which that's not a great scenario for the people of Middle-earth in general, right? So even as attractive as it is to imagine having Eonwe come back to bring Sauron to heel again like he did before, which you got to think he could still do, right? I don't know. I got to think. One-on-one, Eonwe can still mop the floor with Sauron, you'd think. But anyway, that's an interesting point, Christopher. I never thought of that. More potential people to take the ring. Yes, that's certainly true, and disquieting. But yeah. So, and Dan, of course, there's a big difference between what the scenario that Elrond is invoking here, and that is a titanic clash between the power of Mordor and the powers of the West. There's a big difference between that and what Aragorn is ultimately going to do at the Black Gate, of course, the kind of decoy maneuver, last second kind of decoy maneuver there at the Black Gate. But again, it doesn't matter. I don't think that Elrond is here. Again, the whole clause, had I a host, right? It would avail little. It would all it would accomplish is to arouse the power of Mordor. So we don't have that. We don't want that. But I would still hold forth, Donald. Although you're right that the Elder Days and the Last Alliance are not the same, and I think that I agree with you that that's even true in the Lord of the Rings. And by that I mean at the stage in which Tolkien's concept of the history of Middle-earth had developed and had connected with the Third Age by the time he was writing this passage in the book, it is still true that the Last Alliance and the Elder Days are distinct in Tolkien's imagination. That's true. But honestly, the audience, I mean the Hobbit audience that Elrond is addressing, right? I mean, there's this kind of, this kind of continuity. Well, not continuity. Like one mythic figure standing behind the next. I mean, this is Elrond, right? The guy who was there at the Battle of the Last Alliance, right? And so when he refers to a host of elves in armor of the Elder Days, I think that we are meant to imagine all of those things, right? Because, by the way, I bet you that the Last Alliance, the elves of the Last Alliance, still had armor of the Elder Days. Bet you Gil-galad's armor was made in the Elder Days, right? As was the armor of many of the elves among them, right? Anyway, so I do think we're supposed to be remembering Gil-galad and the armies of the Last Alliance. But yes, the overt invocation of the Elder Days and the greater and even more inconceivable power of the ancient elves is being explicitly evoked by name here, right? So that I do think we see, the image that this is raising up does, I think, show us Gil-galad and the armies of the Last Alliance kind of in the foreground, right? But in the background behind them, we get, the stories of the ancient elves, like I mentioned, the arrival of, Turgon and the Gondolindrim at the Nirnaeth Arnodiad, perhaps, or the arrival of the armies of the Vanyar on the shores of Middle-earth for the War of Wrath, right? Those things lie behind. And indeed, of course, that's the direct parallel, right? That is, we are coming to the end of the age. Everybody feels the end of the age is coming, right? The crisis, for good or ill, is coming. The transition point. Either Sauron is going to be thrown down or he's going to become dominant for good and all. The crisis point at the end of the Third Age is coming. So we're at the end of the Third Age, which is just like the end of the Second Age, which was the Last Alliance, which is just like the end of the First Age, which is the War of Wrath, right? So standing where they are at the beginning of the end of the Third Age, we do, I think it's right for us to be remembering both of those things here. And Elrond is certainly remembering both of those things. And Lupita, exactly. He is basically saying that he can't, they can't repeat history. Yeah. And Praise, I think that's a really, really good point. The contrast between the powerful and the small hands at the end of ages is quite striking. Yes, it is. And both of the previous times, the end of the age was determined by strength. The strength of those with the power to do good and to stand against the enemy, right? But now, that's not the script for the Third Age. Okay, anyway. The company of the ring shall be 9, and the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. Back to that sentence, and I said before, you know what the first word is that jumps out to me about this? He doesn't call them the Fellowship of the Ring. He calls them the Company of the Ring. You notice that? Hey, somebody do a spoiler for me. Somebody with the e-text. Look it up. When's the first time that this group is referred to as the Fellowship? When does that happen? The title page. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, Chris, that's what I was thinking too. That's exactly what I was thinking. My memory tells me, just as Christopher's is suggesting to him, that the first time it's used is, or shall we break our fellowship? Yeah, Parthgallen was just what I was thinking, Christopher. But I want to, I want to see if maybe we're forgetting. Does it ever refer to them as the Fellowship before that? Because I don't know that it does. I think they're the Company of the Ring. Yeah. I agree. As several of you, I'm thinking exactly the same thing as several of you are. He names them the Company of the Ring. That's pretty technical, right? Like a company is just a small group of people, like a small group of soldiers is a company. We'll see it used in a military context, company, later on in The Return of the King. Exactly, it does have a military connotation. It's like a very small military unit. But they are going to become the Fellowship of the Ring. And I think that is, it's a good way to think of it, Bjorning. Fellowship implies spiritual bonds and a company implies contractual bonds. Something like that. Now, that's interesting, Corey. He had just said that he will appoint companions. Companions form a company. Well, yes, they would, wouldn't they? So I don't think that we can go too far into company in a strictly military term, in a strictly military sense, right? It is used in that sense. And so in one sense, it is, as I said before, a kind of, objective and sort of dispassionate description of a small unit of people deployed together. But there is an obvious link there, as you suggest, Corey, between companions and company, right? We've already had Three's Company, right, as the title of a chapter. So we have associated already in this book company with something a little bit more friendly than as a military unit necessarily. But you're right, Aranas. A company can be assembled from strangers. Yes, absolutely. Dan, you're absolutely right. When fellowship is used in the Breaking of the Fellowship chapter, fellowship isn't capitalized. So I don't think Tolkien is even thinking of the word like a title. No. And certainly the Fellowship of the Ring, as a title for the book, is imposed on it well after the fact. It's only when the publisher in the post-war era says, dude, paper is too expensive. This book is long. No one's going to be able to afford this book. We need to publish it in 3 volumes, that Tolkien was then forced to come up with a title for this volume, and he called it The Fellowship of the Ring. So it was a very retroactive title set upon the book. But anyway, I just think it's important. So yes, we'll get to the Breaking of the Fellowship, but my point is it doesn't happen I don't think it happens at all until then. And that, I think, is an interesting thing to remember. And I think it's an interesting thing to note, particularly in the context of Elrond's emphasis on choice, right? They may become a fellowship. We know that they are going to become a fellowship, but they will only become a fellowship as a consequence of their own choices, right? When the bonds form among them, the bonds of their dedication to each other and their choices together, that is, that's a different thing than merely the company of the nine, the company of the ring, that Elrond has appointed them to. Okay, so that's the first thing. The company of the ring shall be 9. Okay, yeah, good. The breaking is the first instance. The fellowship is used after the prologue. Yeah, and the prologue doesn't count, because that also, written later, doesn't count. Yes. Good. Okay, so what else was I going to say? The 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. Okay. What does that mean? In what sense are they going to be set against the 9 riders? I mean, it's kind of tidy, right? From a symbolic standpoint. But I guess this is one question that I have both in this and the next paragraph. To what extent is Elrond being merely symbolic? And if he's being symbolic, to what purpose is he being symbolic, right? Symbolism is important. But what's the point of symbolism? Why do you do a symbolic thing? Right? You do a symbolic, symbolism communicates, right? Symbolism conveys meaning. That's the point of symbolism. It can convey meaning. Now you can do right, Hathalas, exactly. It's a pathway to meaning. Whom? What? If they're doing making a symbolic gesture, to whom are they gesturing? Right? Yeah. Rowan asks, why have a gross of guests at the party? Well, Rowan, that's exactly the question that the Sackville Bagginses are asking. That's why they're offended when they've been chosen like goods in a package, right? To fill up the required number like goods in a package. But again, the symbolism there is fairly important, or fairly obvious in some ways, right? It is, Bilbo explains it. 144 is the total of his age and Frodo's age. And so together they total 1 gross, which is a peculiar number. And of course, as we will learn very much later, a very important number from an elvish point of view, 12 squared. So he chose their numbers to equal their total. What is the message? What is communicated? What is communicated is like, it's about us, right? Your numbers are chosen to equal our combined ages, right? So again, the message is fairly important, and to the Sackville Baggins is offensive. The 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. Again, set against in what sense? Indirect opposition to? 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. He's got the 9 walkers and 9 riders, and we have the 9 walkers, and now it's fair. Is that? Yeah, it seems to me a more symbolic opposition to the 9 riders. I don't think it really is like, it's kind of like a baseball team, but it's not really like a baseball team. I don't think we're meant to square up and go toe-to-toe between the 9 walkers and the 9 riders. I mean, it's obvious that we're not, because speed and secrecy is the whole point, right? So I don't think he means set against in that kind of sense. Now, it's interesting because we have a contrasting moment to this, right? You remember ahead to when Theoden is going to say something very similar, right? When Theoden, well, no, it's not Theoden. It's, who actually says it? It's Aragorn who actually says it, isn't it? Right? But when I'm talking about the White Rider, right? I'm talking about we're talking about the White Rider. I'm talking about Gandalf later on after his return. And they say, the enemy has 9, we have 1 greater than they, the White Rider. There we have explicitly that is a toe-to-toe opposition thing, right? On his side, he has 9 ringwraiths. On our side, we have 1 Gandalf. Game on, right? Is what seems to be being conveyed in that moment, right? I don't think that's what Elrond is conveying here. I don't think that's what he has in mind, that the 9 walkers shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil in the way that they are anticipating Gandalf shall in fact be set against the 9 riders that are evil, right? Yeah, and you're right, Christopher. Gandalf's response is black is mightier still, right? Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Yeah. Anyway, I'm bringing that up though as a contrast, right? A contrast to what Elrond is saying here, because I don't think that that's what it means. There seems to be a more now. Some people are interested in the kind of outside symbolism of 9. Is it connected with Norse mythology, something like that? I don't know, but I don't know that we need to go there, because the referent is right there. He's explained why he's chosen, why their number should be 9. Not because 9 is, and I'm not saying 9 isn't an important number and that might not add a kind of an additional layer of meaning. But what I am saying is, first we have to address what he explicitly says. He is choosing 9 walkers because there are 9 riders that are evil, right? This is how it shall be. The company of the ring shall be 9. And they shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. Not directly. They are set against them. Rowan says maybe it's more like tarot cards. Not 100% sure I understand that, but do you mean like in balancing opposition to? Does that get, Rowan, at what you're pointing to there, perhaps? Because that's That's rather what it sounds like to me. That kind of a balancing thing, right? Yeah, okay. In opposition to, but balancing. But again, balancing not in strength, not in this is not we're not handicapping a 9-on-9 brawl between the two of them. And that's interesting, Hathalas. I think you're right. The fact that he says riders versus walkers does imply that the riders are greater in strength, as riders have advantage over walkers on a military level, right? But here's my theory. My theory of what is in Elrond's mind at this moment when he says, shall be set against the 9 riders that are evil. Not in strength, not just in position, but in role. Sauron just sent the 9 riders hunting for the ring, right? Sauron discovered the ring is out there. Probably in a land with the uncouth name of Shire, and being in the possession of someone with a ridiculous name of Baggins. So what does he do, right? In this need, in this moment of crisis for the bad guys, potentially good crisis, right? He sends out his greatest servants. He sends the 9 riders out on a quest. Their quest, it's the quest for the ring, right? They are set out on a quest for the ring, and off they go to attempt to find the ring. And they failed, right? They failed. Elrond is sending out the 9 walkers, setting that against the 9 riders who were set out. And they are setting out, the 9 of them, on a quest. These 9 walkers, like the 9 riders, were Sauron's greatest hope for recovering the ring before it could be claimed by, a new ring lord, which would be at the very least inconvenient. His greatest hope were the 9 riders, so the 9 walkers are the greatest hope of Elrond and the Free Peoples, right? And they too are being set out in a quest for the ring, right? Except, of course, as you might expect, it is the reverse, right? Rather than to go and find the ring and bring it back, they are being sent out with the ring in order to lose it. Picking up on those reversals that Frodo was picking up on, the reversal of his errand from Bilbo's errand, right? No treasure hunt, no there and back journey. He goes to lose a treasure instead of to gain one. And we can see that similar kind of reversal happening here. So yes, I do think, Bjorning, that Elrond is basically Sauron's opposite number in this situation, essentially. Yeah. Yeah, Matt, that's exactly it. Yeah. And he is, in one sense, right? Now, Sauron plays a bunch of roles, right? And those roles are kind of distributed among different folks. As has always been true, being a good guy is a team job, whereas the bad guys tend to work alone, or anyway, they tend to have they tend to be a sole proprietorship, if you see what I mean. Yeah, they do delegate, Valori. You're right that they do delegate, but it's not delegation so much as so much as I don't know, forcible allocation of roles. Yes, they have minions, not partners. Exactly. Yes, exactly. Good guys delegate, bad guys subjugate. That's right, Bard. There you go. That sounds like a bumper sticker now. That's exactly right. Yep. Almare was thinking of subjugate as the obvious counter. Right. That's it. Yeah. So I do think that here Elrond is even perhaps under. I mean, maybe this even gives us a glimpse, Matt, into the extent to which Elrond is issuing commands here, right? Saying "shall be" all the time here, and "I will choose" and that kind of thing. This is his role. This is his job. He perceives that. He perceives that he is in the counter position. It is up to him. He might not have called the council, but it was called at his house. Right. And that's not by accident. And it is not for nothing that it gets called the Council of Elrond. Right. It wasn't his idea. But he's had a job delegated to him and he's doing it. I think. So in some sense, yes, Jordan, I do think that this is his foresight talking. Absolutely. And yes, Fourth Dauntless, I agree that this anti-parallelism also makes it a lot more important that Elrond doesn't command anyone to do anything. You are absolutely right. Only delegation, not subjugation for Elrond. Exactly. And it doesn't that help to kind of open up the tone of the rest of this? And those two things that we observed from the beginning, both I'm going to speak and tell you exactly what's going to happen on the one hand, but on the other hand, I'm going to insist upon the free choice of all the people involved. We can really see how those two things go together, right? How those two things work together. So yeah, I think that is the pattern that we are showing. That is the sense in which the Nine Walkers are set against the Nine Riders that are evil. They were the evil version, and their motivations and methods, everything about it was evil, right? It was about they were his slave instruments, Sauron's slave instruments to reach out and grasp power for himself, right? At the expense of others. The Nine Walkers are going to be Elrond's voluntary troop, right? Voluntary company who will, by their own choice and in their own and self-sacrificially for themselves, go forth in order to lose power and to set free others, to save others even if they themselves are not saved. The Nine Riders were evil, the Nine Walkers are good. That's what it means, right? That's what it means for them to be set against each other, I think. With you and your faithful servant, Gandalf will go, for this shall be his great task and may be the end of his labors. This shall be his great task. That's another really interesting piece of insight. You know how I would paraphrase that? I would paraphrase that like if I were Elrond, paraphrasing Elrond speaking to Gandalf here, I would say, you know, you'd look good in white, Gandalf. Remember the reference, remember ahead the reference that Galadriel is going to make about who was and who was not the head of the council. Sounds to me like Gandalf has just gotten a promotion. I think that Elrond now sees clearly, and it's not all that hard to see, that this task was appointed for Gandalf. The ring came... If the finding of the ring by Bilbo and its passing to Frodo was the great act of providence that has set into motion the great deliverance that's going to come at the end of the Third Age, if that is the plan, yeah, it's pretty much Gandalf's retirement party, JJ. That's exactly right. If this is the plan of providence, Gandalf was obviously chosen as the instrument of that providence. I mean, you know, it doesn't take 7,000 years of experience to read that one, I think, right? And when you combine that with the fact that the former White Wizard, whose job it seems to have been, based on the discussion we were having before, the analysis we were doing previously, the White Wizard's role seems to have been to be the chief enemy of Sauron, to be the leader of the good guys in the war against Sauron, in the long strategy and war against Sauron. It's now doubly clear. Even if, what would have been really awkward is if Saruman had shown up, right? And been like, hey guys, all right, let's go. I'm the White Wizard. Let's do this thing, right? That is like, without the treachery thing. Like, what if he hadn't betrayed them? What then, right? Or what if, at the very least, if he had concealed it? But I mean, literally, like, what if he hadn't actually betrayed them? That would have been awkward, right? But anyway, that's not what happened. And of course, you can see those two things seem to be in place together. That is, there's a reason why Providence was wise to the future treachery of Saruman. Turns out, right? Yeah. So yeah. So this shall be his great task. Elrond seems to me to be foretelling, ultimately, Gandalf the White. And maybe the end of his labors. That is a hint at the end of the age, clearly, right? I mean, by saying and maybe the end of his labors, that's actually a really low-key way. I mean, if I had to paraphrase that, maybe the end of his labors. For this shall be his great task and maybe the end of his labors. I would paraphrase the whole thing as Gandalf is being unofficially promoted. He's being made, hey Matt, he's being made interim White Wizard right now. Gandalf is, right? He's being appointed interim White Wizard until his official appointment is later confirmed. And maybe the end of his labors. I would paraphrase that as, and it's endgame, people. It's endgame. This is it. This is it. The end of the age is upon us. For good, everything is on this throne, right? We are betting the ranch on this, because this is it. This is it. So that was two pretty big declarations in the context of that, both of which, well, I don't know if the second one went over Frodo's head, but I bet you the first one did. Yeah. Sorry, Matt. Didn't mean. I can't help but laugh. I'm sorry. Sorry, it's a private joke. Matt has through his career been named interim something or other on a couple of occasions, and his institution has tended to leave him as the interim, whatever it was, for I'll go ahead and call it a ludicrously long period of time. So it's kind of a running joke. But anyway, yeah, exactly. Anyhow, okay. For the rest, they shall represent the other free peoples of the world. Now, more symbolism. First, we had the 9 walkers and the 9 riders, and we talked about that a little bit. Now, why the potpourri? Right? Why are we going? Why the sort of, why this approach? Why the representational approach? They shall represent the other free peoples of the world. Again, no, I do not think that Elrond dragooned Legolas and Gimli. I don't think he leaned on him and said, you're going whether you like it or not. I do think he chose them. I don't think that they just randomly volunteered. I think he approached. My guess is that because he said, "I chose you, companion. You know, I will choose you companions." He names Legolas and Gimli. Legolas and Gimli. I just combined their names. That's kind of fun, right? Anyway, he mentions Legolas and Gimli, and I think he clearly has suggested that he implies that he has talked to them before. But the thing that I think that he definitely decreed, right, is they shall represent the other free peoples of the world. Like, with the authority vested in him as the counterpart of Sauron on the good guy's part, you know, the guy in whose house the council was chosen to be and all that kind of thing. People still teasing me about Legolas and Gimli. It is kind of a fun t-shirt idea. But anyway, yeah. Anyhow, so doesn't that seem to be a unilateral decision on Elrond's part? They shall represent the other free peoples of the world. So the people, he's gonna work with the people, and he's gonna make sure that they have their own free will as to whether or not they join the fellowship. But he's determined they shall represent the other free peoples of the world. That's happening. Okay. So there's going to be at least one elf, one dwarf, and one human in the party. Like, that's settled. It could only be a question of which is which. And fortunately, Gimli volunteered, because if Gimli had said no, they'd had to rustle themselves up another dwarf. Now, there are other dwarves there. We know Glóin is there, right? He's maybe a bit elderly to go on this quest, but yeah, he who knows? Maybe there would have been there's a second best elf in their party that could have served, but yeah, I know they didn't. I doubt they came across Wilderland by themselves, but still, it would have been awkward. Anyway, the point is, and yet several of you are asking, like, why Legolas? I agree. Let's not skip over that. Legolas shall be for the elves. That's a pretty big statement, right? I mean, it's unlikely in several ways. Unlikely in several ways. Why Legolas? Why one of the elves from Mirkwood? I mean, surely of the demographics, elves, dwarves, and men, he was most spoiled for choice when it came to the elves, right? I mean, he's got a pretty good roster of elves that he could send along. Now, we already talked about how Glorfindel, though kind of an attractive idea, is, you know, maybe not, in fact, the best way, right? Now, praise, I agree that if we're going anti-powerful, a Sylvan elf fits that better. I have chosen Legolas because he is lesser than everybody, because he's so much lamer than everybody else who lives here in Rivendell. Like, all these elves are just way too cool and way too powerful, so I'm going to send the elf with the smallest hands in the place, right? Right. Gildor would certainly have been a better choice, but Legolas was more available. Yeah. He was going in the generally right direction. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know exactly. Here's another thing that I think that we can see. And this, I think, might sound like, the worst, like the least satisfying possible answer. Why did he choose Legolas? Because Legolas was going that direction anyway. Right? Yeah, Blood the Inspirer, exactly. He's the only elf that lives east of the mountains. That's it. Yeah. If he chose Legolas, be sure it wasn't for any any skill or power that, he possesses, he was going that way. That's what he says. They're willing to go. Gimli and Legolas, Gimli too, right? They have this in common. Legolas and Gimli are going because they're headed east. So, like, they can give you a ride as far as the turnpike, and then they'll drop you off. That's what he says. They're willing to go at least to the passes of the mountains, and maybe beyond. Well, if you're really lucky, they'll go like halfway to Mordor with you, right? But don't count on it. Don't count on it. Now they are still making a concession, right? It's not like Legolas and Gimli are just, picking them up like hitchhikers. I mean, they are going out of their way. I mean, at the very least, since the ring is going to be heading out south, I've heard a rumor that the ring is going to go south, as yet unconfirmed by the text, but they're going to head out south. And, so then, like, after crossing the mountains by the passes, which the company is going to, like, by the Red Horn Gate, which is plan A, then they're going to have to schlep all the way back north to get back to the Lonely Mountain and Mirkwood. So it's very kind of them, right? Very kind of them to go so very far out of their way. But yeah, they're headed in that direction. My question is, how much do you think that weighed with Elrond? I actually kind of think a lot, actually. I think a lot. Who's Elrond going to choose? The one that he thinks most qualified? The ones that he think have the best, strengths and qualities? No. He's not going to choose that. When's he going to choose that? Exactly, Bard. He's going to choose on the chance if chance you call it premise. Elrond's job is to pick up what Providence is laying down. That's Elrond's job, right? That's like his only job. The foresight thing, right? Okay, there's an elf and a dwarf who are headed east. Done. Clearly, those are your companions, right? Oh, and look, there are two men headed that direction too. Even more in that direction, right? They're not only headed east, they're also headed south, just like the ring. So great. Aragorn and Boromir. Yeah, they're headed to your direction too. So we'll throw them into the company also. Because they're the most committed? Because, no. In fact, these four people that he's just introduced, Legolas, Gimli, Aragorn, and Boromir, and I'm not trying to diss on any of them, especially not Aragorn, none of them are being recommended because they're devoted to the cause. In fact, all of them are not devoted to the cause. All of them have other jobs. Legolas is supposed to get back to Mirkwood. Gimli's supposed to get back to the Lonely Mountain. Boromir is supposed to get back to Minas Tirith, and Aragorn's supposed to go with him, right? To answer the call of the dream poem, right? Yeah. So he doesn't choose them companions based on the ones that he thinks are most qualified or the ones that are most fanatically devoted to the cause, with the exception of Sam, your faithful servant, whose faithfulness he mentioned as his primary criterion, right? So we got Frodo, who just now swore that he would go, right? I do. He just gave a sort of vow there. And then your faithful servant, right? Sam, who has made his own promise that he's going to stick with you. And 4 guys going vaguely in your direction. Yep. Yeah. To Juice Man, I agree. Providence does seem to have chosen the members of the company all the way down to Merry and Pippin. Agreed. And I think that that's what we're going to see when we get to the Merry and Pippin passage, which we are going to do very, very soon. I love the I love the recapitulation of the Strider chapter that happens here. Elrond makes it all grand. For men you shall have Aragorn, son of Arathorn, for the ring of Isildur concerns him closely. Right? Strider! Cried Frodo. Right? He immediately bringing us back to the Inn at Bree, right? When they met Strider and didn't like the look of him. And when Strider, said that he would give them his help as long as they promised to let him come with them, right? To take him with him as long as he wishes to go, and until I choose to leave you, were his words in Bree, right? And they promised that he agreed, right? And he smiling, which hey, Aragorn's smiling. That's kind of unusual. Didn't we say that was unusual? I seem to remember we had a conversation about this a year or so back. A couple years back, maybe. But anyway, yeah. So here's Aragorn smiling. Yeah, it is on. I thought that was on our watch list. Yeah, and it's not a grim smile. Exactly. Yeah, good. Yeah, Jackie says she just listened to that episode. Yeah, exactly. Kartsamus, I agree. When did they show up? Who's there? Yeah, we had no idea that Aragorn was in the room until he speaks up here. That's interesting. Okay, anyway. Right, yeah, we came to the conclusion, actually, that Aragorn's smiles are mentioned more often than anybody else's. Yeah. Okay. Right. All right, well, we'll come back to that. And I ask leave once again to be your companion. I would have begged you to come, only I thought you were going to Minas Tirith with Boromir. Okay. Well, it's getting late. We'll return to the end of this passage next time. What I want to start with, and you guys can help me remember because I often forget one week to the next what I wanted to talk about. So help me remember. Beginning class next time. We're going to start off by looking at Elrond's introduction of Aragorn, specifically the reference to the Ring of Isildur concerning him closely, as a very unusual, in the context of everything else we've seen here, rationale to his inclusion in the Fellowship, right? He seems to be putting Aragorn in a different category than Legolas and Gimli, for instance, or even Gandalf. So I want to do a little comparison and contrast there, and then we'll get down into their exchange. And then, yeah, we can think a little bit more about who's here in the room and what's interesting about that. Yeah, anyway, okay. So we'll start with that next time, but it's getting late and I should let you guys go. Thanks for joining me. We will be back next week. Don't forget, Baymouth registration is open, and don't forget to join me this Saturday. The easiest place to join me this Saturday is on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/SignumU, or YouTube or our other channels as well. I'll be streaming it everywhere. But there is going to be a Zoom link if you want to participate through Zoom. So I will be, we'll be announcing that. We'll be distributing that Zoom link a little later on in the week. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will talk to you guys soon. And it's field trip time.
Good evening.
How are you, Valori?
I am all right.
Good. let's see. I am.
Yeah, it does make me wonder if Elrond had to talk his sons out of going at any point.
Right. Apparently unsuccessfully in the long term. If he talked him out of it, he talked him out of it apparently only briefly. All right. Okay, so we're headed back to. Oh wait, we're moving on. So, but let's go back to the same spot. Let's start at the same spot here today.
Yep.
What is it? Drengle?
Yes, Drengel.
All right, yeah. So we can just head to the. We'll stable master it out there again.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and we'll see. Today we'll be beginning the last leg of our field trip exploration through the wells of Langflood, and so it will be time for us to make decisions, because I'm really not quite sure what to do next, because of course Eregion we're going to be exploring when we get there in the book, but we still have a certain amount of time, you know. Like how many, I mean, if we could estimate how many, slide passages do we think it's going to be before they get to Eregion? I think it's going to be a few.
True, but Eregion's pretty big, and there's a couple of special bits too. We've got the Redhorn Modes and the Faradras.
It's true. We would have plenty to look at Eregion.
Yes, we would.
It will probably take us a while.
Lots of ruins too.
And obviously we want to save the pass until we get there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there would still be plenty of time to kind of save up the relevant bits and still look around at the rest of it. Yeah, I guess that's sensible. Yeah. Probably not a good idea to start a whole new other region before we get there.
Yeah, unless it was going back to something like
I mean,
picking up the new place at Rivendell when they have it.
Right. I mean, the Wells of Langflood, I was comfortable doing this because although, we get, Gundabad, which has been interesting, and has taken several weeks to look at, when you look at the map, I mean, there's just not all that much up here,
Mm-hmm.
It's like the one location and a few locations building up to it.
Yep.
Whereas, Eregion has a lot more. Whereas, let's see, while I'm waiting for that guy to, if we were to go over to the arid Mithrin over here, over to the Grey Mountains, yeah, there's quite a bit here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, the Dale Lands and the Iron Hills. Yeah. Yeah.
Were you not in the raid party for some reason?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't think I am. No.
Oh, okay. I'll send another invite.
Sorry, I must have missed it.
It's
Make sure I'm in the same group with him, please.
yeah. I was checking if the parties were balanced when I discovered the error.
All right, I'm on a goat. I'm currently on a northbound goat.
Everybody look at me, 'cause I'm riding on a goat.
Can we add Saginath?
Yep. Go.
All right.
A lot of people this time.
Yeah.
There you are. Hang on, hold still. Hold still. Everybody stop running in front of him. Oof.
Aha, there we go.
Organized. Hang on.
Okay.
I gotta do some shifting around here. Let's see. Oh, a lot of hunters in that
Healer kind of thing.
Okay. Well,
All right.
JJ, one thing I can tell you right up front is that the tower bridge at the top of that Angmarim fortress is clearly new construction,
Oh,
not
yes.
part of the original. I mean, maybe it's a reconstruction of something that was there originally, but... Okay, are we good?
I think so. Anyone
Okay,
else,
all right.
send me a chat and I'll make sure to add you.
Good. Let's immediately foray into super dangerous territory.
Hooray!
Okay, so there's one thing that I want to notice right away, and that is this gateway arch here, double arch, is clearly old, right? We've got the old black metal tops and the old stone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And notice also how these, like the pillars of the arch look like they used to be connected to walls and aren't anymore.
Yeah.
Right, so
I think we've seen
clearly,
something similar in Angmar.
yeah, the new fortress is like smaller than the old fortress.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the old one had a big enclosed courtyard and the new one does not, right? But yeah, so most of this, only the outermost walls seem to be remnants of the older days and the rest of it is new. But we have these two double arches. Okay, now let us go around the castle and around most of the dragons. See this wall here on our left. Classic old Angmar right there.
Yeah, just like the stuff they made the barracks out of.
Yeah. For a second, I thought that rabbit was going to attack me, but I guess not.
Yeah, that's the ordinary rabbit.
Yeah, exactly. It was running towards me with a glint in its eye. What a peculiar wall. What is that business on top, and why does it dip down? What? I mean, it can almost jump up here, and I'm not all that athletic, you know.
True, but maybe it wasn't always embedded in the hill like this.
I think it must have been, but it's, well, pretty short. In any case, if it was just a courtyard wall, I guess, I don't know. Weird. But okay, anyway, we don't need to go all into the castle necessarily because we've seen the other one, which is very similar to this. Did somebody just level up?
Similar to the ones we've seen in Angmar.
Or has it just started to snow? It just started to snow once we got up the hill. A fierce whelpling? It's adorable. Okay. All right, and here we are. Okay. Look at that's just what I was interested to see.
Yeah.
Same arches up here.
Mm-hmm.
So the bridge is new and the tower to which it leads is new. Ooh, we can go in.
Looks a lot like Carn Doom.
Does look a lot like Carn Doom. It also looks
Barad
a lot. The
Gularan.
doors. Yeah, Barad
Barad
Gularan is just what I was going to say. Yeah, the tower door there is just like Barad
Bridge
Gularan.
specifically, but yeah, this part here is like Barad Gularan. And there's the
Okay, just looking at the
Right.
stonework here. So yeah, the concept of the tower bridge seems to be old, even if the construction is new. Oh, lots of feistiness going on in here.
Yeah, this is very much like Barad Gularan.
It's exactly like Barad. Even down to the upholstery. Look at that. They imported a rug. They brought that all the way from Angmar, this rug.
True, but the vaulted arches on the ceiling and everything is a lot nicer in Barad Gularan, where you just had sort of like cagey balconies and stuff.
And not to mention the semi-stained glass.
And a bookshelf. Is this another accountant's office?
Maybe this is where those literate wargs come from. Where did I find those? I was in Grifflet, right? I was in Rohan and I was doing one of those one of Quickbeam's quests in the library, which was infested with wargs. which were carrying pages of books on them. So,
Is this an elevator?
which?
Yes.
Oh,
It
here?
looks like an elevator, but it's like a door in the
Oh.
floor.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah, there's
A
a little,
dumbwaiter,
and
yeah,
there's a
that's
little
what I'm talking about.
safety chain to prevent you just like, but you can't get into it at all, right?
Wow,
Yeah,
they
it's-
have more OSHA standards than elves already.
And dwarves.
Yes, for sure. It does kind of look like an elevator cage, doesn't it?
They're saying it's a dumbwaiter.
Right. Well,
Elevators,
guess-
I know their name.
when you have like man-eating orcs, elevator and dumbwaiter kind of serve the same purpose, don't they?
Well, that and, yeah, like trebuchets and whatever.
Right. Right.
Does it go down?
No, you can't get into it. Like that that chain stretched 1 foot above the floor is an absolute
Reminds me
wall
of
that prevents you
those,
getting in.
Yeah, it reminds me of those hatches you see on New York streets where trucks are supposed to drop their deliveries.
Yeah, the delivery doors. Except they're made of wood.
Are they made of wood?
That's funny. Everything here is made
Doors
of
are.
iron.
Look like they're made of wood, don't they?
That or stamped
Maybe
iron.
they're metal.
Oh, it looks pretty rusty.
Could be.
It looks pretty
Look at this.
rusty.
Those look like Gondorian doors to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at the panels.
Now, have we
Not
I think
exactly
we've
white
seen it-
tree design, but
We've seen this sort of banana leaf design before.
yeah. Trying to see if I can see it anywhere else.
Is that one of the dark elven
Hey,
ones?
was that corpse there when we got? No. Okay, that's a new corpse. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I just turned around and saw a corpse there. I was wondering if it
Oh,
was
it's doing
furniture.
that thing where it's throwing lots of different baddies at us.
Okay. It's mostly spiders and Angmarim in here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's some painting on the floor over here.
Ooh. Hey, where have we seen that before? This, like the rift?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Similar, but not the exact same designs.
Similar to the
Oh,
rift.
it's after me.
What? Are you being chased?
Yeah, I was. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. I've never been in the rift. We've seen this? The rift?
You know, we went to the outside. I mean, I'm thinking of the outside of the rift. Huh.
It's beautiful. Most of
What
these
an-
columns are super interesting. They're almost like inverted versions of the towers outside.
They almost look elvish or natural.
Yeah.
Like it's ape.
They don't seem evil.
Right, and then-
Sound,
Oh,
it doesn't
this is
look
the
horrible.
bookcase, the
It's
scroll
top
box.
heavy. Well, these columns in the middle are elvish. I meant the ones around the wall. Sort of half columns all around the wall. The fact that
Oh,
they put
yeah.
all the weight in the middle makes them look really sort of uneven and top heavy. It's kind of unsettling.
What, like the slender little waists of the columns there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't look sound. It looks decorative, but because of that, you feel like this place is a little uneven,
Yeah.
unbalanced. But yeah, the one in the middle looks a bit like party elf architecture.
What is up with those concentric rings in the ceiling? They look like lenses or
They could be.
something.
Yeah, they could be. It's very.
What are they meant to
Frankenstein.
concentrate the light of the sun down through the stained glass window in the roof?
Or the moon.
Down what? To the carpet?
Yeah.
Moon letters?
Moon
Jordan
letters.
is- Well, no, that's what Jordan is suggesting in
Yeah.
Carpet cleaner. Werewolf machine.
Werewolf machine. Yeah, I was thinking of Doctor Who also.
I was
Okay.
just thinking concentrated moon rays. I forgot.
Right.
I'm also thinking of a horrible instance in Moria. The one with all the mirrors.
Wow, that
Firestarter.
instance. That I was going to say which horrible instance in Moria.
Yeah.
Oh man, I will never forget the super long instance that I got to the very end of and couldn't complete.
Alas.
I mean, like I was physically, like my character was physically unable to interact with the boss, and I had to exit the instance and do the whole thing again.
Oh, good grief.
Ugh.
Alack and alas.
Never have I forgotten that. Okay. Yeah, I wonder why the bad guys only have scrolls.
The Balrog, like 3 times.
No, wait, they do have codices. Look, there's a whole stack of codices right here, but they've only got scrolls in the case.
The wargs ate them.
Yeah, the wargs took the
been
rest
there
of
a
them.
while too. The bottoms got rusted out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Not a very useful bowl, that.
Yeah. It's like when we left a baking pan outside in the rain.
Exactly. Okay.
Blame scenario.
Well, this is a strange tower.
Yeah.
So I would then theorize, based on what we can see, that now there's no other doors, right? This is just a one chamber. This is a one-shot deal, this chamber?
I believe so.
Okay. All right, so let's see. So let's theorize here. Oh, yeah. This is a new Angmarim Tower. It suggests that the new Angmarim, as they're building these outposts, are what, like influenced by different styles? That they're like, we know the elves pre-Angmar built the rift. So like the nod to the, aesthetics of the rift would seem to be like a deliberate kind of, I don't know what.
Is it
Not an
mockery, or
homage.
is it just sort of like in sort of aping it?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm wondering. If it's, something like that. Well, my cat just attacked that fox. Was that fox going to attack me? Probably it was. This goat's not bothered, but...
I don't
the
know.
foxes?
Foxes out
No,
here.
the foxes are... He's not going for me. No, my cat's going for him, though. Okay.
Poor fox.
All right. Okay.
This is why it's important to keep your
That's another hobgoblin. Nice.
nice.
Words that have never been said before and never shall be said again.
I like the hobgoblins. All right. So we're heading up towards Wormsgraf. That's where we're going. All right. So yeah, it's like they imported a whole bunch of styles from all around Angmar, which are all like perceptible in very different circumstances in Angmar. It's like the, Angmarim potpourri in there. Also, we've got
It's a different
cold
kind of
drakes up here, right?
Cold drinks? Cold.
Cold drinks. Yeah, exactly. This is where
I mean, you could up here.
yeah, it'd be easy enough, I suppose.
Yeah.
Cold
Whoa.
drakes and worms.
Don't stop to pick the indigo.
Yeah, that's my job.
Picking the indigo.
Yeah, that's a running gag. I even named my in-game band Indigo Plant.
Okay.
Right.
Oof,
Well,
these are close calls.
lightning just came down and struck that worm. What are the odds of that? Okay. Pretty
Very
good.
strong
dude.
that we got a Ringkeeper in our group.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say.
I guess.
When was that done? Oh yeah, we do have. Okay.
Sorry,
that
I'll
makes
join you in just a second. I was helping somebody in chat.
Oh yeah, no problem. Okay. Now, looks like we get to go straight through a Hobgoblin Camp.
Oh boy.
Now, look at this approach. So we've got spiky things on a whole new level here.
Yeah, they do like their spiky thing.
So it's fairly frequent. They do look like street lights or telephone poles or something, don't they?
Yeah. Now they're aping Hobbit architecture.
These look almost like they should be functional,
Yeah.
even though I don't think they are.
Malkorash.
Oh, did that hobgoblin? Do these guys have tattoos?
I thought
They're
they had
painted.
two
Why are
heads
they
for-
painted white?
Frost.
It's a frost thing. Do they have
Yeah,
designs?
their name. Well, their name is Frostbound Hobgoblin.
Frostbound hobgoblin. I want to see one from the front.
Frosted hobgoblin. Magically
Don't spin
delicious.
around. Yeah.
Oh, it's almost like the Urukai markings.
Yeah,
Oh.
almost. I mean, they're not hands, of course. Huh. What are these over here? Bones? Yeah.
Looks like bones.
Whoa, these are the
elephant, I should say.
vertebrae right here. What was this the skeleton of?
Elephant or one of those big dragon dealies?
It's got to be a huge dragon.
Great one.
You know, Jordan, I wonder, could they be anti-dragon spikes? I mean, they do almost look like a defense against aerial creatures, don't they?
Oh, yeah. They don't perch there. We've only ever seen stuff like that before where there were Maryville who needed roosts and perches.
Yeah. Right, making it awkward for them to land?
Yeah.
I bet you that's
Just like
what
the
that
dragon
is
spikes
for.
in Blacktown.
I thought they looked more like tactical than merely decorative.
Yeah, they didn't have some of the heart that some of these gates have.
Yeah.
Dragons were not known for being friendly neighbors.
No.
Yeah.
No, now they have, of course, decorated them all liberally with bones.
Well, yeah, the employees of Sauron never really get along very well with each other.
Right. Yeah, look, here's another skeleton. So those have to be dragon skeletons of varying sizes, as we can see. Okay, I thought over there I saw some cut stonework, but it was just an optical illusion.
Hmm.
Okay. Oh, this is nifty. Look at this whole pavilion thing with a courtyard. This is
Hobgoblins
nice.
Kind of got some. They got some style.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, again, their aesthetic is very similar to what we've seen many other with the bones and such, but
Cleaner than orcs.
yeah.
Is this where we can let sleeping frostbound hobgoblins lie?
What, in the tents?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
guess
no,
so.
it's dragons. We got a skull right here.
Another dragon skull?
Yeah, there's a dragon skull over there.
Oh, right here, yeah. Oh, the horns are interesting. I
Oh, I
guess
like
maybe
this
some
move out.
dragons have horns?
Any of the ones attacking us have horns?
I don't remember. They might have done. Boy, okay, there's a whole lot of...
Well, rolls that elephant anyway.
Man, the number of dragon skeletons.
All the war machines are broken and like thrown over and on their sides and in pieces.
Yeah, when are these from? What siege was that huge wheel designed for?
Oh, that looks dwarvish.
What, that machine?
Yeah, it looks absolutely.
Yeah, it kind of did.
dwarvish.
We could
Was it-
have one of our minis pacify a dragon if you want to get a close look at one of the drakes.
Oh, well, no, I can see... Yeah, well, he's got horns. He's got horns.
No, I see it from here. We're good.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
got-
blue ones are big.
he's got a whole mess of horns. He's got nothing but
Yeah.
horns. He's got like 6 horns.
Cornucopia. I'm gonna stop here. Alright. Yeah, not one of those little blue ones. There was a big blue one.
What, dragon-wise?
Yeah.
Okay, these are mountain drakes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So where are we? We're almost there to Wormscraft.
Hmm.
Ooh, but it's getting late.
What, do
Maybe we
think
should
it's gonna
explore
be
Wormsgraf itself next week. Yeah, how about we do that? Let's explore, because then we can approach it from the other way. Having come through this way, we've seen. It's really interesting. I'm glad we saw this with the skeleton. The skeletons are the most interesting part of the Hobgoblin Camp, to
Yeah, I
me.
think so.
Because, of course, we can also see the very great antiquity of that Hobgoblin Camp, given all of the very old skeletons that are there. But all right. Okay. We should probably stop here because it's getting late.
Okay.
And I kept everybody super late last week, and I probably shouldn't do that again this week.
A lot of interesting stuff up here.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll explore the rest of Wormsgraf next time.
I'm betting there's going to be worms.
Yeah. Well, no, we don't know exactly what the tower bridges are for exactly, JJ. But maybe we can think about that a little bit more too.
It just looked like a way of getting things up the hill with the dumbwaiter.
Yeah, shortcut to the
Well, if you have a casual grade up a hill, it's easier than trying to get something up the stairs or a steep ramp.
Yeah, I mean there is a path right outside, it's true. I don't know. If there weren't an elevator, I would have thought it might be like a private entrance. You know, that like somebody's private domain was up there at the top of the tower, and so like they had a private back door that got to the top of the tower, but the elevator suggests traffic inside the tower, you know,
More
you
of
could
a
easily get
tradesman's
there.
interest.
So yeah. I know that defeating and having an entrance defeats much of the point of a tower. Yes, it does seem a puzzling. I mean, like a very big, prominent back door into the very center of your defenses seems an odd thing to build.
Yeah,
Always
at that point, it's
did.
just a late second floor.
Yeah. Well.
Oh, here we go. Big blue guy, giant horns.
Giant horns. Yeah.
Yep.
Clearly.
Yep, there
Okay.
we go. This is the skeleton. Right.
All right.
They get bigger than that. All right. I guess we're off then.
Okay. Yep. No, but we should be done. We can finish up here in Wormsgraf next time, and then we'll be done. So after next week, we'll be done with the Elder Slade, and then, or not the Elder Slade. What is this? Wells of Langflood? No, this is the Elder Slade. I was right this time. I was wrong the last time. I said Wells of Langflood last time. Okay, yes, we'll be done with the Elder Slade after next week. And then I guess, yes, we can head down to Eregion. So, yeah, very good. Okay, so that'll be the plan. We'll start in on Eregion, and we'll do most of the Elfie stuff until we get to the actual path of the Fellowship. We'll wait to do that until they depart. We'll probably start at Gwingris or something. Very cool. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks everybody. Bye now.